Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my new video. My name is AJ, and today I'm going to be talking about Rana Mitter. This guy is the UK's version of Gordon Chang. He claims to be a China expert. He's interviewed everywhere. You see his face everywhere in news channels. Yeah, he knows nothing about China. And this guy, same as Gordon Chang, has predicted China's collapse, years and years back. And I'm going to talk about this guy. A lot of people have not heard about him, but he is the UK version of Gordon Chang. So without further ado, guys, before I start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Check your comments haven't been deleted. And also, if you really like the video, don't forget to join my Patreon and also buy me a coffee. Without further ado, guys, let's get on with the show. So who is this Rana Mitter? You can see here, known as Rana Mitter, a British historian and political scientist of Indian origin who specializes in history of Republican China. He's a professor of history and politics of modern China at the Department of Politics and International Relations at Oxford University. So he's a lecturer at Oxford University. He is very high up, as you can see. He's also created a book. This book is called China's Good War by Rana Mitter. So obviously he must know a lot about China for him to create a book about China, right? So other things, he's also named one of the world's top 50 thinkers. We're not talking about UK, we're talking about the world. So one of the world's top 50 thinkers. So that's a great honor. And you can see a lot of interviews where he's been called as a China expert. A lot of interviews. He's also in a lot of news channels in UK. He comes in regularly. He talks about the UK and China all the time, and he's also mentioned something like this: China needs an awful lot from UK. Relations will thaw in 6 months, says China expert. He's wrong. China does not need an awful lot from UK, but anyway, that's my opinion. So without further ado, guys, let's get on with what he has to say, and let's see how much he knows about China, shall we? So here's a video I found about him in YouTube, and this video was released in March 12, 2018, so not long ago, just over 3 years. So it wasn't that long ago. So let's see what he knows about China and what he said about China at that time, shall we?
When we think about what these powers are, some of the very important points that George has made, some of which I would agree with entirely, I think do begin to look a little bit lacking in solidity. Let me tell you briefly what happened when I spoke to a friend of mine who's an economist. He's Chinese, based in China at quite a high-level research institute. Secretly, he is in fact a great fan, of George W. Bush and of evangelical Christianity, but he doesn't tend to mention this very much at Chinese Communist Party meetings. However, when I spoke to him recently about China's prospects and where the economy is going, I did it with patience. He said to me, look, Rana, I don't know why you're asking me these questions, because I can tell you, the Chinese system is going to collapse in 5 years from now. And I thought for a minute, I said, yes, but my friend, I remember I met you first 10 years ago, and you told me then that China was going to collapse in 5 years, and it's 5 years beyond that. He thought again and said, yes, I do remember, Rana, that I did tell you that, but this time, I am right. Now, there is a danger, I think.
So you can see here, this guy, same as Gordon Chang, is advocating that China's going to collapse, and he claims he knows somebody in the Chinese Communist Party who tells him that China's going to collapse, and he's an evangelical Christian and he's a fan of George Bush, etc. I mean, this guy, what the hell is he on? There is no way a member of the Chinese Communist Party would tell him these things. I mean, this guy is just talking out of his ass, seriously. Impossible to believe that anyone from the Chinese Communist Party would come up to him and say China's going to collapse, China's going to collapse. Seriously, what the hell is this guy on? He's just making excuses. He himself thinks that China's going to collapse, and he's just trying to blame others. He doesn't want to look like a fool like Gordon Chang making his own predictions. He'll just say, oh, somebody from the CCP told me that China's going to collapse. I didn't say it myself. So he's trying to weed around the bushes here. So let's carry on to see what else he says, so shall we?
And try to project forward where we are now in a linear sort of way. But I think that nonetheless, I think what that story suggests is that actually, in a sense, arguing that things are going to change in a very obvious direction can be a bit of a mug's game. And China is a place which I think, when looked at closely, has so many flaws and so many difficulties that giving it greater status in the world is actually going to create more problems than I think it is solutions.
Okay, so this guy, he claims to be a China expert, but he says China has got so many flaws, so many issues. Have you looked at UK? Have you seen how many flaws UK has got? And when this interview goes on, you'll know that this guy knows nothing about China. He's just another anti-China basher like the rest of them, and he knows nothing about China. Let's carry on. Let's catch him out on the act, shall we?
Let's look in particular at the way in which China has started behaving as it moves towards the kind of multipolar world that George has been talking about. It is a country that, in the language of the playground, is Billy no mates, or that should be Jiangxi no mates, I imagine. In other words, if you had to think of countries around the world which have a genuine, close sense of alliance and affinity with China, you've got Cambodia, North Korea, maybe Pakistan. I mean, these might be guys you want to take with you to a knife fight, but in terms of bringing to the United Nations, this is not the posse that you want to be seeing.
So this guy thinks China around the world has got no friends. He thinks there's a couple of countries that China's friends with, and he says maybe Pakistan. Are you joking? This guy claims to be a China expert, and he says maybe Pakistan. Pakistan is like an iron brother to China. And not only that, in the recent UN charter, 140 countries supported China in its when Canada tried to put sanctions on China. 140 countries supported China and put counter sanctions against it. So don't tell me that China has got no friends. I mean, seriously, what planet is this guy on? You got Russia, you got the ASEAN countries, you got Central Europe, Central Asia, you got Eastern Europe as well. There's so many countries out there, so many, the African countries as well, loads of African countries support China. This guy, seriously, he doesn't really know what he's talking about, and he claims to be a China expert. So let's carry on, shall we?
I thought Russia was their new best friend.
Right, let me just go into that very briefly for a second. Basically, Russia has a lot of oil and gas. China needs a lot of oil and gas. If they had been such good friends, I would like to know why Vladimir Putin had to sign the oil gas $200 billion cooperation agreement at 4 o'clock in the morning. It suggests that this was...
So what if it gets signed at 4 o'clock in the morning? What's that got to do with it? Seriously, this guy's supposed to be one of the top 50 world thinkers, and he's just chatting out of his bum. Seriously. What the hell? What's the point of signing something 4 o'clock in the morning? There's negotiations to be done between two countries. It doesn't matter if they're friends or not. You gotta, it's business. You gotta negotiate terms. You gotta negotiate, everything. So however long it takes, as long as it gets signed, it doesn't matter how long it takes. You think this is a 5-minute job? Just walk in, sign the papers, and walk out. Seriously, what kind of world this guy lives in?
Was the product of some pretty hard-line bargaining between these two. When I spoke to a Chinese diplomat actually a couple of weeks ago about this question, she just said, the thing is, you have to remember that Russia has been trying to invade China for a lot longer than America has, and our historical memories bring that to mind. Just to come back briefly to the point about...
Okay, he's saying Russia had tried to invade China a lot longer than America. It's got nothing to do with history. It's got nothing to do with the past. This is everything to do with the present. And the present, America's having a trade war with China. America's the country that's trying to contain China, not Russia. America's the country that's setting up Quad and NATO against China and other countries against China, not Russia. America's the one that's being very aggressive, coming up with all these COVID lab theories, Xinjiang theories, concentration camp, genocide, not Russia. America's the aggressor here, not Russia. So I really don't know what this guy's on about. So let's carry on. Listen to more crap from him, shall we?
About the multipolar world, though. China has been entirely unsuccessful, it seems to me, in terms of creating a narrative around itself that people want to align to. The United States has allies of some standing. One can argue, and I think we will argue, about how real those alliances are, but Japan, Taiwan, South Korea are all countries that have some real and formal affinity to to an American-dominated order.
So, alright, so this guy claims to be a China expert, then he just called Taiwan a country. Did you hear that? So let's listen to him again, shall we? Let's listen to this guy again.
Actually, just to come back briefly to the point about the multipolar world, though. China has been entirely unsuccessful, it seems to me, in terms of creating a narrative around itself that people want to align to. The United States has allies of some standing. One can argue, and I think we will argue, about how real those alliances are, but Japan, Taiwan, South Korea are all countries that have some real and formal affinity.
Did you hear that? So he calls Taiwan a country, and this guy claims to be a China expert and one of the world's 50 top thinkers. Can you believe this shit? Can you actually believe this shit? And this guy's going around being a China expert. He's like a lecturer at university at Oxford. He doesn't know anything about China. Even I know more than him. Just basic knowledge. Taiwan is not a country. How? Oh my god, seriously, this is the problem with British China experts, American China experts. They claim to be experts, yet they know nothing at all. Even the normal human that's walking down the street like myself knows more than him. And this guy's going around the world making money out of lies again. And not only that, he mentions that America's got allies of standing. Then he points out Japan, Taiwan, South Korea. Are you serious? Japan is bloody under debt. 250% is in debt. 250% debt to GDP ratio. How would he call Japan a powerful country when whole country is ready to collapse? Same with South Korea. Look at China's partners, Russia. Russia alone is more powerful than Japan, South Korea put together. And he calls Taiwan a country, and how is that a country? And how is that a country that's standing with affinity with America? This guy seriously knows nothing.
To an American-dominated order in East Asia. Even more bizarrely, to anyone who remembers the era of 30 or 40 years ago, Vietnam is now by default an American ally. In that,
he thinks Vietnam is an American ally. Vietnam is not an American ally, you fool. Seriously, even I know that. If Vietnam was an American ally, they would let in American bases all over Vietnam to contain China. They said no. They said no to America. We don't want your bases. Go away. We're happy to, deal with China ourselves. We got a good relationship. They're our biggest trading partner. Go away. Just leave us alone. This guy knows nothing.
Kind of context, I simply think whether we think it's a good thing or a bad thing is almost irrelevant. The facts on the ground and the facts on the seas are that China has become the kind of careless, in some ways blundering power, unable to use and direct the kind of economic might that it's developed.
So can you see this? He calls himself a China expert. He writes himself books about China, and here he is on a chat room just talking crap about China. Seriously, this guy knows nothing. Nothing. Does he understand why? Does he give examples of anything? No, he doesn't give any examples. He's just purely throwing out accusations left, right and centre without giving examples. Why do you think China is like this? Why do you think China is saying this? What did China say exactly? What did China do? Give us examples. No, he can't. Because he's got no legs to stand on. He's just coming out with crap again.
To develop genuine, stable, multilateral alliance is in Asia. And I have the fear that if that were to become more powerful, then we might look back on the days of George W. Bush, a politician whose talents I think I probably share the opinion that George has on in general, as a time of peace, harmony, and possibly, a Metternichian or Bismarckian sense of statesmanship for which we will all be highly nostalgic.
He talks about George W. Bush like he's some sort of saint. This guy went into Iraq, killed millions of people, and here he is praising him. Seriously, do you believe this guy? Do you believe that this guy is a China expert? 1 minute he's bashing China, doesn't know a thing about China. coming up with wild accusations about China. Next minute praising George Bush. Seriously, what the hell is this guy on? And not only that, this guy's Indian, so obviously it kind of makes sense as well.
Thank you, Rana.
Oh my god. So I want to take you on to George Galloway. George Galloway is actually one of our highly educated statesmen. George Galloway, if you haven't checked him out, check him out on YouTube. He's the only politician in UK who knows what he's talking about. So this is his reply to this guy.
George, you seem to be in favour of a move towards China having more power and the US less power, and yet you're talking about a country which allies itself with North Korea, with Iran, and I mean only this week actually vetoed a Security Council resolutions saying that both sides in the Syrian conflict ought to be taken to the ICC for war crimes. So why would we want a country like that dominating the world?
As DCI Hunt said in Life on Mars, you say that as if it's a bad thing. You see, you look at the world from an entirely different standpoint. To me, I'm not an expert on China, as our two friends are. I don't make my living watching and criticizing China. But I know two things. First of all, that China isn't going to collapse in 5 years.
Thank you, George. Thank you. Did you see that? George does not claim to be a China expert at all. He's just an ordinary citizen like myself who knows the truth. And this guy that Rana Mitter goes around the world criticizing China, claims to be a Chinese expert or China expert, and doesn't know what he's talking about. Then you got ordinary citizens here like George, like myself, who knows that China's not going to collapse in 5 years, and just puts him to shame. Again, listen to him. Listen to him.
In Life on Mars, you say that as if it's a bad thing. You see, you look at the world from an entirely different standpoint. To me, I'm not an expert on China, as our two friends are. I don't make my living watching and criticizing China. But I know two things. First of all, that China isn't going to collapse in 5 years.
Thank you.
So it's extremely worrying if such a high-ranking member of the Chinese establishment is regularly predicting that to you. In fact,
Exactly. That's exactly what I said. George is exactly saying the same thing I am. We're on the same wavelength. Again, it's very skeptical that high-ranking officer of the Communist Party would talk to this Rana Mitter guys and talk crap about China. There is no way. It's impossible. And exactly, George is having the same concerns as I have. It means that this guy Rana Mitter is just talking out of his arse, talking BS.
China's progress is vaulting, and the prospects for China are extremely rosy indeed. I would that we had such prospects as they do. And the second thing I know is that they know very well what their foreign policy is. And it is, as you've just described it, in a derogatory way. It is that we will not allow you to go around the world bombing people in the way that you did in that golden age you imagine will all...
Exactly. See, George Galloway, he's talking sense. He has the same mentality as I have. You know, they're not going to take to US bullying and bombing countries like Syria, Iraq. And this guy Rana Mitter is talking about the golden age when George W. Bush was bombing Iraq and is calling it nostalgia. Seriously, where is this guy from? And finally, we have, George Galloway at least is saying it as it is.
Will be harking back to...
But the French weren't suggesting we bomb Syria. The French were suggesting we should deal with human rights abuses.
Let me give you a vignette that you haven't heard. William Hague called the Chinese foreign minister in the run-up to the vote in the House of Commons last August, where we stopped by a majority of 13 a war with Syria and by extension Iran, with Russia and China on the other side of that war. I think you should be grateful to the House of Commons that we have for having done that. But William Hague called the Chinese foreign minister, who wouldn't come to the phone. But he sent one of his factotums to the phone to tell Mr. Hague there is no point in a conversation there are no circumstances in which China will support an attack on Syria. So
Exactly, guys. There was a time when British were getting along with the Chinese, and they were calling the Chinese just to get their vote to bomb Syria. I mean, can you believe this crap? Can you believe this? And because China said no, there is no way we will allow this. This is one of the reasons that UK doesn't have good relations with China anymore, because they think China's going to follow whatever UK follows or America follows. They think China's going to be another donkey that, you know, supports whatever crappy regime change or bombing of Muslims all around Middle East. They think China's going to follow them to do that. But you know, good thing that China's finally is one country that's standing up to all of this Western imperialism. You go, George.
That's the Chinese foreign policy. A rejection of the neocon warlike foreign policy that we have suffered through this unipolar world over this.
Exactly. Did you hear that, guys? This is exactly the kind of politician we need here in UK.
Last period.
George,
I take my hat off, but I take it off to China's foreign policy.
Let's do Stephen come in.
Exactly, guys. Because can you see that? So it takes George, who is not even a China expert, to debunk this bloody Rana Mitter, whatever his name is, debunk this guy, China expert, top 50 world thinkers of the world, created a book about China. You know, he's a lecturer at Oxford University, the biggest university in UK, and he takes George Galloway, just an ordinary citizen, just to have a bit of common sense to debunk everything that guy said. So can you believe this? Can you believe this shit? So this guy, UK's very own Gordon Chang, the guy who claims to be a China expert, one of the world's top 50 cleverest people in the world, doesn't know crap, absolutely crap about China, doesn't know anything. This guy is useless. All he does is criticize China, comes out with ridiculous facts, ridiculous accusations, doesn't know what he's talking about, and he claims to be an expert. He claims that Taiwan is a country, and he's just a fool, to be honest. He's just a fool. Britain's very own Gordon Chang. I hope this guy just disappears, to be honest.